My son walked into my living room, stopped dead in the doorway, looked around like he'd wandered into the wrong house, and said, "Mom, who did this? Did you hire someone?" I just smiled and said, "Sit down, sweetheart. Let me tell you what $40 and a broken heart can do to a living room." See, he didn't know that 3 months earlier, I was sitting in that same room, in the dark, at 11 o'clock at night, staring at furniture I hadn't moved in almost a decade. He didn't know I'd cried in that room more times than I could count. He didn't know that the five-star living room he was standing in had started with me throwing away the one thing I thought I could never let go of. I'm not going to tell you what that thing was yet, not because I want to tease you, I don't like games like that, but because you need to understand where I started before you'll understand why what happened next mattered so much. By the end of this video, I'm going to walk you through all 7 of the changes I made, in the order I made them, and I promise you, some of them cost nothing at all. But more than that, I want to tell you the story of why a woman my age, set in her ways, decided one ordinary Tuesday that her house, and maybe her whole life, needed to change. Stick with me, this isn't just a decorating story. By the time we're done, I think you'll see it's a story about starting over, no matter how old you are when you do it. My name is Linda, and I'm 88 years old. I spent time in the Army when I was young, back when women in uniform still got funny looks at the grocery store. I don't talk about that much, because that's not really what this channel is about. But I'll tell you this, the discipline I learned back then, the idea that you get up, you make your bed, you do the work whether you feel like it or not, that stuck with me for 70 years. It's part of why, even at 88, when I decided my house needed to change, I didn't just think about it. I did it. I've lived in this house for 31 years. My husband Walter and I raised 3 children under this roof, and for the last several years since he passed, I lived in it mostly the way we'd left it. Same couch, same curtains, same everything. Until the day I decided that wasn't honoring him anymore. It was just hiding from moving forward. So let me take you back to where this really started. It was a Tuesday in early spring. My granddaughter Emily had stopped by to bring me groceries, the way she does most weeks. She's 24, works at a marketing job downtown, and she has this way of saying things without meaning any harm by them that still lands like a small stone in your shoe. She set the bags down on the counter, looked around my living room, and said, "Grandma, this room feels kind of sad." Now, if you'd said that to me even 5 years ago, I might have laughed it off. But something about the way she said it, not cruel, just honest, sat with me for days. I kept thinking about it while I did the dishes. I kept thinking about it lying in bed at night, sad. Was that really what my house felt like now? So I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat down in the middle of my living room floor, right there on the rug, like a child, and I just looked around, really looked. And here's the thing nobody tells you about grief. It doesn't always look like crying. Sometimes it looks like a room that hasn't changed in 8 years. Sometimes it looks like curtains you keep meaning to wash but never do. Sometimes it's dust collecting on a chair nobody sits in anymore because it was his chair, and moving it feels like erasing him. That's when it hit me. I wasn't preserving Walter's memory by keeping that room frozen in time. I was just stuck. And Emily, without meaning to, had said the one word that finally cracked something open in me. I want to pause here and say something to anyone watching this who has lost a spouse, or a piece of themselves, or simply lost track of who they used to be before life got hard. There is a difference between honoring the past and living inside it. I didn't understand that difference until I was 88 years old, sitting on my own living room floor. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to spend a fortune. I wasn't going to hire anyone. But I was going to take my house back, one small piece at a time, starting the very next morning. The first thing I tackled was that chair. Walter's chair, a big brown recliner that had been sitting in the corner of my living room, facing the television, for almost 15 years. Here's what I want you to understand. I didn't throw it away. I want to be very clear about that, because I know some of you are gripping your armrests right now, thinking I'm about to tell you I tossed my late husband's favorite chair in the garbage. I didn't. What I did was something much smaller and much braver in its own quiet way. I moved it. That's it. That's the whole trick, and it cost exactly $0. I moved that chair from the corner of the room to a spot by the window where the afternoon light comes in golden around 4 o'clock. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat in it myself, in the sunlight, with a cup of tea. Here's why this mattered so much more than it sounds like it should. That chair, sitting in the corner, facing a dark television screen, had become a monument to absence. Every time I walked past it, I saw what wasn't there anymore. But that same chair, moved 8 feet across the room and turned toward the light, became something else entirely. It became a place where I could sit, where I could read, where I could watch the birds in the yard. Sometimes the thing that's weighing your whole house down isn't ugly, or old, or cheap-looking. Sometimes it's just facing the wrong direction. And I think that's true for more than furniture, if you think about it long enough. Now, this next one is going to sound almost embarrassingly simple, but stay with me, because the psychology behind it is the real lesson. I went into my linen closet, the one I hadn't organized in who knows how long, and I pulled out every blanket, every throw pillow, every little decorative thing I owned. I laid them all out on my bed like I was doing inventory, and you know what I found? I had 3 blankets I'd forgotten I even owned. Beautiful ones. One my daughter had knitted me for Christmas 4 years ago that I'd never once put out because it wasn't the right color for the couch. Well, I decided that Tuesday that I didn't care about matching anymore. I put that blanket right over the back of the couch. I swapped out the 2 flat, faded throw pillows that had been there since roughly the Clinton administration and replaced them with pillows I already owned but had stored away in a closet, saving them for good. Here's the hard truth I want to share with you. I think a lot of us, especially women my age, spend our whole lives saving things for good. The good dishes, the good blanket, the good version of our own home. And we wait for some occasion that never quite arrives. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am 88 years old. If I'm not living in the good version of my life now, when exactly did I think that was going to start? That swap cost nothing, not 1 dime, and it changed the entire feeling of that couch from something forgotten to something that looked cared for. Now we get into a little bit of spending, but I promise you, not much. I want you to think about the lighting in your own home for a second. Really think about it. Most of us, especially those of us who've had the same house for 20, 30 years, are living under one single overhead light in each room. That flat, harsh, all-or-nothing kind of light. And I want to tell you something I learned from watching one too many home shows on the television. That kind of lighting is the enemy of coziness. It's the same lighting they use in a hospital hallway. So here's what I did. I went to the dollar store. Yes, the dollar store. Don't let anybody tell you there's shame in that. And I bought 2 small lamps, $6 each, $12 total. I put one on the little table by Walter's chair, now sitting in its new spot by the window, and one on the side table by the couch. And then, in the evening, instead of flipping on that harsh overhead light, I turned on just those 2 small lamps. I sat there the first night and I nearly cried, and not from sadness this time. The whole room felt different, warmer, softer. Like a room in a nice hotel instead of a room where an old woman lives alone. That's the honest truth of how it felt to me, and I'm not too proud to say it. Here's the principle behind it. If you want to understand the why, bright, even, overhead lighting shows every flaw, every worn spot, every crack in the walls. But warm, low, scattered lighting, the kind that comes from lamps placed around a room instead of one bulb hanging in the middle, it hides the flaws and highlights the comfort. It's the same reason a candlelit dinner feels romantic and a fluorescent-lit break room does not. Light isn't just about seeing, it's about feeling. $12. That's all it took for trick number 3. Now, I want to stop here for a moment because I don't want you to think this video is just about lamps and pillows. Somewhere around trick number 3, something started happening to me that I didn't expect. I started looking forward to evenings again. For years, and I mean years since Walter passed, evenings had been the hardest part of my day. That's the time when the house gets quiet, when the phone stops ringing, when you're left alone with your thoughts and whatever program happens to be on the television. I dreaded 6 o'clock the way some people dread Monday mornings. But that week, something shifted. I found myself finishing dinner and actually wanting to go sit in that living room. I'd turn on my 2 little lamps, wrap myself in my daughter's blanket, and just sit. Content, not fixing anything, not grieving anything. Just sitting in a room that finally felt like it belonged to the person I was now, not the person I used to be. I called my daughter that week and told her about it, and she got quiet on the phone for a second and then said, "Mom, I haven't heard you sound like this in years." I share that with you because I think there's a lesson buried in it that goes far beyond decorating. Sometimes we think our sadness is about the big things, the loss, the loneliness, the aging body that doesn't move like it used to. And sometimes, yes, it is about those things, and no lamp in the world will fix that. But sometimes, some of that heaviness is sitting in the environment around us. A stale room, a dark corner, a chair facing the wrong way. And when you finally change the environment, you're surprised to find how much lighter you feel, even though the bigger sadness of losing someone never fully goes away, and I don't think it's supposed to. Now here's one that surprised even me. I did not repaint my walls. At 88, I wasn't about to be up on a ladder, and hiring someone to paint felt like more money and more hassle than I wanted. Instead, I did something much simpler. I took down everything that had been hanging on my main living room wall, and I mean everything. Some of it hadn't been dusted in a decade, and I started fresh. I went through old photographs, ones that had been sitting in a shoebox in my closet for years, and I picked out about 8 of my favorites. Not the formal, stiff photographs from photo studios, the real ones. Walter laughing at a barbecue in 1988. My daughter's first day of kindergarten. My son, gap-toothed, holding up a fish nearly as big as he was. I bought simple frames from the dollar store again, $1.50 each, and I arranged those photographs on the wall myself, standing on a sturdy step stool, taking my time, moving them around until it felt right. Total cost, about $14. But here is the truth about that wall that matters more than the money. For years, that wall had held a large, generic painting of a lighthouse that Walter and I had bought on a whim at a furniture store back in the 90s. It wasn't ugly, it just wasn't us. It was the kind of thing you buy because a wall is empty and you need to fill it, not because it means anything. When I replaced it with our actual life, our actual faces, our actual memories, something in that room finally started to feel like my story instead of a stock photograph off a showroom floor. And I'll tell you, that's the trick my son noticed first. He stood in front of that wall for almost a full minute before he even said anything to me. This next one, I'll admit, I learned almost by accident, and I think it's the one people talk about least. My neighbor, a lovely woman named Sharon, mentioned to me once that when she walks into certain houses, she can tell immediately whether the person living there is doing well or struggling, and it's not because of the furniture. It's the smell. Now, that stung a little to hear, if I'm honest, because I suspect my house had fallen into that category. The smell of a house that stopped trying. Old carpet, a little bit of dust, the particular staleness of windows that don't get opened enough. So I did two things, both of them cheap. First, I started opening my windows for 15 minutes every single morning, rain or shine, just to let the stale air out and the fresh air in. Costs nothing but the small effort of unlatching a window. Second, I bought a $3 candle, vanilla, nothing fancy, and I lit it in the evenings instead of leaving it in the drawer where I'd stored it for company. I want to tell you something that might sound silly, but I believe it with my whole heart. Smell is tied to memory more than almost anything else. When my house started smelling like fresh air and warm vanilla instead of stale carpet, I didn't just notice a change in the room. I noticed a change in how I felt walking through my own front door. Coming home started to feel like coming home again, instead of just returning to a building where I happened to keep my things. By this point in my little project, I was feeling something I hadn't felt in years: momentum. And momentum at 88 years old is a precious thing because it doesn't show up often, and when it does, you'd better use it. So I tackled the clutter. Now, I want to be careful with this word because clutter doesn't mean memories. It doesn't mean the things that matter. What I mean by clutter is the stack of expire coupons on the side table, the pile of mail I kept meaning to sort, the 3 remote controls for a television I'd replaced years ago that no longer worked with anything in the house. I spent one single afternoon, just one, going through every surface in that living room and asking myself one honest question about each item. Does this belong here, or has it just been sitting here because I stopped noticing it? I filled one small trash bag and one donation box. That's all. It wasn't dramatic, but when I stood back and looked at those clear surfaces, the side table with just a lamp and one framed photo instead of 6 months of mail, the whole room breathed differently. It felt less like a room that had been surviving and more like a room that had been cared for. I think clutter does something sneaky to us as we get older. It creeps in a little at a time, one unopened envelope at a time, and we don't even notice it accumulating because we're the ones who put every single piece there ourselves. But visitors notice, grandchildren notice, and more importantly, I noticed, once it was gone, just how much quiet mental weight all that clutter had been sitting on top of me. Now, I promised you 7 tricks, and I've walked you through 6 of them. Chair, pillows and blankets, lighting, the photograph wall, the smell of the house, the clutter. But the 7th one isn't a task at all. It's the rule that made all 6 of the others actually work, and I want to save it for last because I think it's the most important thing I'm going to tell you today. The rule is this: I stopped decorating for the house I used to have and started decorating for the woman I am right now. Let me explain what I mean. For years, without even realizing it, I kept my home exactly the way it had been when Walter and I built our life together, as though changing a single pillow would somehow be an insult to everything we'd shared. But here's the truth I finally understood. Sitting in that sunlit chair with my tea, a house that only honors the past stops being a home for the person still living in it. Walter would never have wanted me sitting in the dark, in a sad room, out of some misplaced loyalty to how things used to look. When my son walked in and asked if I'd hired a designer, what he was really responding to wasn't the $12 lamps or the dollar store frames. It was the fact that, for the first time in years, the house finally matched the woman actually living in it. A woman who still has mornings to look forward to, tea to drink in golden afternoon light, and photographs worth hanging where she can see them every single day. That's the seventh trick, and it's the one no amount of money can buy at any store. You have to decide for yourself that you're allowed to still be changing, still be growing, still be worth decorating for, no matter what age is printed on your driver's license. So there you have it. 7 changes, 1 chair moved 8 feet, a few dollar store lamps, some old photographs finally given their proper place, and one hard, honest conversation with myself about what I'd been holding on to and why. Total cost for everything I've described to you today came to right around $41. $41, and a willingness to sit on my own living room floor and ask myself some uncomfortable questions. If there's one thing I hope you take from this video, it's this. It is never too late, and you are never too old, to decide that the space you live in and the life you're living inside of it deserves your care again. Grief doesn't have an expiration date, and neither does the right to feel at home in your own house. If this story meant something to you, I'd love for you to sit with me again next week, when I'll be sharing another chapter of what I've learned in 88 years of living, losing, and starting over more times than I ever expected to. Take care of yourselves, and take care of your homes. They're more connected than most of us ever realize.